Japanese senseis. I went over there twice. Then I learned from some Boeing consultants. So I have a little manufacturing background too. And now I'm working for Simpler and doing what I love to do, which is teach other people lean. So what I hope to do is share you some of the learnings that I have as I learned A3, and A3 thinking and the A3 tool as I learned it going through my process. So A3 is a really technical word for a piece of paper. Everybody know that? It actually, if you go over on a copier and on your printer, you pull down and it'll say A3, which is 11 by 17 piece of paper. And Toyota basically started with an A3 and used that size of paper because they said it was one piece of paper, and that was back in the days when they faxed things, that they could put everything on it and tell the whole story and fax it. So they didn't have to have multiple pieces of paper and pull all of them together, their problem solving and their thought process. They did it on one piece of paper called the A3, and that's why it's called A3. It's just a format. So there's a tool, which is the piece of paper, and some places use 9-box A3s, other people use 7-box A3s. There even is, I think, some 5-box A3s. We teach at Simpler the 9-box A3, so that's what we'll go through with it today. So how many of you feel stressed at work? I'm just putting your hand in. Because we have lots of problems to solve, at least in healthcare we do. I'm not sure about other businesses, but I know in healthcare we do. But we have a strategy now. A3 is a great strategy, and it allows you to focus on the critical aspects. It allows you to define a problem statement, and really helps you pinpoint what it is you're going to tackle with the data and where you're going to go. And we try to make sure that, how many of you like to type or computer Excel document A3s? I have some people I know that like to do that. So I'm going to tell you, when you first learn, take a piece of paper and write it in pencil. Isn't that right? Isn't that what I tell you? We draw pictures, we write them out. It really helps you think it through differently than when you're typing in an Excel document. Now, yes, eventually you put it into some kind of computerized document, you save it, but to learn, it really is good to write it out on a piece of paper. And we have blank A3s all over the place as we start. We use them for everything. So most people use them for problem solving, but we can use them for strategic planning. If you're developing a service line or a business, you can use an A3 to work through that thought process. Personal development plans, I've used it. I have an A3 on myself and what I'm going to grow on, and because I have to speak louder. I have competition here. And for us as lean consultants, we do what we call rapid improvement events. So every time we do an event where we're trying to fix something and we get a team together, we write A3s around those events. And usually it's a cycle of 12 months. So we write an A3 thinking, okay, over 12 months, what are we going to do? So it's not that we write it and don't look at it again for 12 months, though, right? You're constantly updating it, you're going back, and as we talk about box A, I'll explain more about what is important about that. Here's the key. This is the first piece of thing that you do, and so many people forget to do this, which is put the date on it, right? Indicate, when you're starting it. Put a title on there, like I said, that makes sense to you, because if you put a really generic title, it's very hard later to archive it, to really understand what it was that you were writing about, right? Again, you're trying to tell the story, so even the top boxes of your A3 are really important. So I like to think that this is a very important box. This is the box 1 of the 9-box of the A3 thinking, and we call that the reason for action box. And I always say, when I try to train people about this is really telling us why we're doing what we're doing. Why is this problem so important, right? What's the chief complaint, as we say in the healthcare world, right? What's the problem statement? We want to make sure that we spend enough time in this box understanding why it's important for us to even write an A3, right? The initial state is when we look at our current process. So you have to spend enough time on the initial state. So this is the state where I say, go look at the process. Go to the gemba or the shop floor or where the work is done and look and see what the process is doing. Also, you have to gather data, right? You can't write an A3 without data. What do they say? Without data, it's just whining, right? The target state is, where do we want to go? So, where do you want to go? What is your idea or your aim for your problem and your solution? What are the metrics you're trying to achieve? So, if my son only does his homework half an hour and my metric is I want him to do an hour, what's the target state? So the gap analysis is box 4. So we're already at box 4, but guess what are the first 3 boxes that are so important? The first 3 boxes, right? If you don't spend the time on the first 3 boxes, you're going to not have a good solution. So gap analysis is just that. Here's where we are, here's where we want to go, what's stopping us from getting there. And we use tools like the fishbone, and if anyone has done the cause and effect fishbone tool, we'll use tools to prioritize and look at all the issues. We may use trend charts, anything that we can to really understand the gaps. The solution approach is where everybody wants to go right at the beginning. So even when we're doing events or we're looking at problems, people will start coming up with solutions. And I always tell them, put that on a little sticky and put it over here, and we'll pull it up when we're ready to look at solutions. But the solution approach, again, is we want to lay out potential solutions. And which one should we try? And which one will give us the biggest bang for our buck? Because we come up with lots of solutions. And we don't always want to implement every one of them. So when we go to box 5, we call it the if we, then we box. So if we did this, then we would expect this. And in the world of business, we also want to understand what is the potential benefit if we did this, and then we expect this. So we may see our process improve, but if we're trying to save money or we're trying to reduce costs, we should try and put a number to that too, to understand, is that a solution we want to implement and try. The solution box doesn't mean you start putting the solution in place. So box 6 is the experiments. So this is what is hard for people because we want you, usually we ask you and anyone who's doing an A3 to go out and try it. So how many people know what PDSA stands for? Plan, Do, Study, Act, or PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act, right? So box 6 is really that. We're writing up an experiment, and I would say to you that you should write it up. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to try this, this, and this, and I'm going to use this person, and I'm going to do this. And then you're going to see what metric you're trying to move with that experiment. But you come back and you reflect back on that experiment, and you say, what worked, what didn't work. Now I'm going to go back and tweak it, and I'm going to try it again. So once we've figured out that we've got some solutions based on the experiments we run, we usually try to implement them right away, right? We want to put them in place. But there's lots of things that still maybe have to happen. So we have a box 7, which is a completion plan. And do you ever think there's nothing ever in box 7? Probably not, right? Because I always say there's always something, which is go out and train the people. This is the key right here, the confirmed state, box 8. So when we look at box 8, remember I said an A3 has a lifespan of 12 months or possibly a year? So this is a dynamic document. It's constantly being updated. We want to make sure that whatever is in this box, so these are the metrics that we're going to measure, has to match the metrics that were in box 3, which was what? Our target metrics, right? So we always say box 3 has to match box 8 for you to say you had a successful problem-solving experience in your A3 signed off, as we say. The last box is the insight box, and I have to say that until I came to Simpler, I didn't know this box. I didn't use this box. And this This is about lessons learned, and it is a very important box. So it's about looking at all of what you've done through your A3 process, and your A3 thinking, and your experiments, and your solution, and you say, what have I learned from all of this? Because we can take what our learnings from one problem and apply it to another, right? So that's the 9 boxes in a nutshell.